Story No. 1. The Man at the End of My Hallway. I don't tell this story often. Not because I don't believe it happened, I know it did. But because every time I say it out loud, I end up lying awake that night, staring at my hallway. This was about 3 years ago. I was living alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an older building. The kind of building where the radiators make sounds like someone knocking, and the hallways always smell faintly like cigarette smoke, no matter how many years it's been since anyone smoked there. I'd been living there for almost a year. I knew the sounds. I knew the rhythms of the place. That's important, because what I'm about to tell you was not the building. It started small. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, always between 2 and 3 in the morning, with this feeling. Not a sound. Not a noise. Just a feeling, like the air in the room had shifted slightly. Like someone had just walked through it. I told myself it was nothing. Stress. Overactive imagination. I was working long hours at the time and not sleeping well anyway. Then one night, I woke up at 2:47 am. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone immediately, and the feeling was stronger. Much stronger. I lay there in the dark for a moment, and then, for a reason I still cannot fully explain, I turned my head toward the bedroom door. It was open, like I always left it, and at the end of the hallway, just standing there in the dark, was a man. I couldn't make out a face. The hallway was dark, and he was darker, like a shape that absorbed the light around it rather than just blocking it. He wasn't moving, he was just standing there, at the far end of my hallway. In my apartment, on the 3rd floor. I want to tell you I screamed, or jumped up, or grabbed my phone. But I didn't. I was completely frozen. That particular kind of fear that doesn't feel like panic, it feels like being turned to stone. My eyes wouldn't move. My body wouldn't move. I just stared at him, and he just stood there. I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like minutes, but it was probably seconds. And then he was gone. Not like he walked away. Not like he turned and left. Just gone. Like a channel being changed. One moment there, next moment the hallway was empty. I slept with every light in the apartment on for the next 2 weeks. I told myself I'd been half asleep, that it was a hypnagogic hallucination, that my brain had constructed a shape out of shadows. I almost believed that. Until my neighbor, an older woman named Carol, who lived in the unit directly below mine, knocked on my door about a month later. She was holding a cup of coffee, and she had this uncomfortable look on her face, like she'd been working up the nerve to say something for a while. She asked me if anything strange had ever happened in my apartment. I asked her what she meant. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said that the man who had lived in my unit before me, before I moved in, before the previous tenant, maybe 10 or 12 years back, had died there, alone. They didn't find him for almost a week. She said sometimes, late at night, she could hear footsteps above her. Slow and deliberate, moving down the hallway. She said she'd lived below that unit for 20 years. She said the footsteps had always been there. I moved out 4 months later. I told people it was because of the commute. I've never lived in an older building since. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, I'll be lying in bed in the dark, and I'll feel that shift in the air. That feeling like something just moved through the room. I never look at the door anymore. Story No. 2. Something was living in the house before us. We moved into the house in October. My wife found it, a 3-bedroom colonial about 40 minutes outside of the city, priced about $20,000 below comparable homes in the area. The realtor said the previous owners had relocated suddenly for work. We didn't ask many questions. We should have asked more questions. The first thing we noticed was the basement door. It was a normal door, plain wood, painted white, with a standard handle. Nothing unusual about it except for one thing. Every single morning, without fail, it was unlocked. We always locked it before bed. Deadbolt turned, checked twice. Every morning it was unlocked again. We assumed it was each other for the first 2 weeks. I thought my wife was unlocking it in the morning before I woke up. She thought I was doing it at night after she'd gone to sleep. It wasn't until we were both standing at that door at the same time, deadbolt clearly turned, that we realized neither of us had been doing it. We had a locksmith come out. He found nothing wrong with the mechanism. We changed the lock anyway. New hardware, new keys, just ours. 2 days later, unlocked. My wife wanted to call the realtor. I wanted to set up a camera. We did both. The realtor was politely unhelpful. Said the house had been vacant for 6 months before we purchased it. Said there were no known issues. Said we were welcome to reach out with any concerns in writing. The camera footage was worse than finding nothing. At 3:14 in the morning, the deadbolt turned. Slowly, deliberately, from the inside, not from the basement side, from our side. The hallway side. There was no one in the hallway. I watched that footage 7 times. My wife watched it once and asked me to delete it. I didn't delete it. I don't know why I didn't delete it. We started hearing sounds after that. From below. Not loud sounds, not banging or crashing. Quiet sounds. Movement sounds. The particular sound of weight shifting on old floorboards. Patient, unhurried weight. I went into the basement twice. Both times found nothing. Clean concrete floor, exposed pipes, the water heater, the fuse box. Nothing that should be making those sounds. Nothing that should be moving. On the second visit, I noticed something that I hadn't seen the first time. Or maybe I had seen it and my brain had quietly decided not to process it. In the far corner of the basement, behind the water heater, someone had drawn a shape on the concrete wall in what looked like charcoal or ash. A rough circle, maybe 2 feet across, with lines extending outward from it like a crude sun or a compass rose. In the center of the circle, a single word, written in careful, deliberate letters. Waiting. I filled it with paint that same afternoon. I didn't tell my wife. She found out anyway, because 3 nights later, at 3:14 in the morning, exactly 3:14 I checked, she woke up and sat straight up in bed and said, very clearly, in a voice I did not fully recognize as hers, "It says it was here first." She remembered nothing in the morning. We were out of the house within the week, left furniture behind, left things in closets. I haven't spoken about the word on the wall until right now. We've never gone back for our things. I've looked up the property records since. The house has had 7 owners in 22 years. Average stay, 14 months. I don't know what was in that basement. I know it was patient. I know it considered the house its own. And I know that somewhere in that basement right now, behind the water heater, on a freshly painted white wall, something is writing that word again. Story No. 3. The woods behind the campsite. I've camped my entire life. Grew up doing it. 37 years of tents and trails and sleeping under open sky. I'm telling you that so you understand what I mean when I say what happened at Ridgeback Creek was different. I know what animals sound like at night. I know what the woods sound like when something large moves through them. I know the difference between a branch falling and something stepping on a branch. This was something else entirely. There were 4 of us. Me, my brother Danny, his friend Marcus, and Marcus's girlfriend Priya. We'd been hiking that stretch of trail for 3 days, and we'd set up camp about a 1/4 mile off the main path in a small clearing beside the creek. Perfect spot. Flat ground, clean water access, good canopy cover. We'd used it once before, 2 summers back. The first night was fine. The second night was when it started. Danny woke me up just after midnight. He didn't say anything, just put his hand on my shoulder and pointed toward the tree line. About 60 yards from our camp, at the edge of where the firelight gave out and the darkness of the woods began, something was standing. Tall, very tall. Taller than a person by enough that it registered immediately as wrong. Just standing at the edge of the trees, in the dark, facing our camp. We watched it for almost a full minute without speaking. It didn't move. It made no sound. It just stood there, facing us, at the exact border between the light and the dark. Marcus was awake by then too. He started to say something and Danny grabbed his arm. Then it moved. Not toward us. Sideways. A slow, deliberate lateral movement, keeping the same distance, staying at the exact edge of the tree line. Like it was circling us. Like it was measuring something. We sat completely still for 3 hours. We kept the fire burning. None of us spoke above a whisper. At some point it stopped appearing in the gaps between the trees, and we weren't sure if it was gone or simply standing somewhere we couldn't see it. In the morning we broke camp in silence and hiked out. I've tried to explain it away in every rational direction I can think of. Tall hiker, bear standing upright, except bears don't stand for that long and they don't move like that. Trick of the firelight, except all 4 of us saw it independently and described it identically. The part I haven't told yet is the part that stays with me. Before we left that morning, in the daylight, I walked to the tree line to look at the ground where it had been standing. The soil at the edge of the woods was soft from 2 days of rain. Perfect for holding impressions. There were no tracks. Not faint tracks. Not disturbed ground. No tracks at all. The soil was completely undisturbed, as though nothing had stood there. As though whatever we had watched move along that tree line for an hour in the middle of the night had done so without touching the ground. Priya quit camping after that trip. Marcus doesn't talk about it. Danny brought it up once. About a year later, we were driving somewhere, just the 2 of us, and out of nowhere he said, "I've been thinking about Ridgeback Creek." I said I knew. He said, "It wasn't looking at the camp." I asked him what he meant. He said, "It was looking at me." The whole time it was looking directly at me, not at all of us. Just me. I didn't know what to say to that. He said he'd started seeing it at the edge of his yard at night sometimes, just for a moment, just at the border where his porch light gave out. I told him to get a security camera. He did. The camera never caught anything. But Danny still won't look out his back windows after dark. And honestly, after Ridgeback Creek, I don't blame him.